islands that are, I mean, not very far away. I mean, even geographically. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. Let's stop here. Otherwise, I go into other details. Class race, of course, it's very much linked to each other. And as you said, the mulatto would then, of course, try to. Usually, they would have access. I mean, starting with slave society, the mulattoes would have access to. I mean, could work in the house of the governor or the plantation owner, would have access, might even be the son or the daughter of the owner, have access to some education, would become maybe a teacher later on and belong to the elite of the local society. And then and everything that comes along with that. I mean, this way to the style of dressing, style of course, which music you hear, trying to be as assimilated as possible. There's, for example, what's his name again? The lovely is La Rue Cazenègre, the street of the Cazenègre huts, the Negro huts. Plays in the 30s. I mean, this epoch, and also turned into a film later on, which shows the way of a young boy raised by his grandmother as the majority, who would do everything that he can get a good education, goes to school, then goes to Fort-de-France, will have access to high school, and so on and so forth. So it shows how coming from the lowest class, and how he's able then to get into the closer to the white people. It's changed somehow, and I don't hear anybody anymore.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Superb. Yeah. The business of Coolitude would also actually interest me, because I know in the Anglophone Caribbean context, at least when it comes to intimate relations between African and Indian peoples, especially in Trinidad, they have this particular term which is taken from Hindi. They call it Dougla, and this idea of this form of mixed race intimacy, and the children who come from such unions, they are given this term Dougla. So I was wondering if in the French Caribbean context, or rather in Karl Torabumbuli's Mauritius, Indian Mauritius contextualization of Coolitude, whether there was a similar reading of African and Indian mixed race intimacies.
I think there are two different things about that. If we look at the Caribbean, you have the same, like you said, but in French they would also be called coolie.
Okay.
And they are not very well seen. Because they would replace the slaves, so they would be, I mean, like on the low step of the social ladder for a long time. But at the same time, so after Coolitude, at least for the French-speaking islands, you have also a movement, Indianité. So they would also then say, okay, but you forget always to talk about us. They're not only Afro-descendants. We also very important part of this society. Even if they start, we are neither Europeans, neither Asians, but we want our part and we want some visibility. It's not that small, but let's say people don't really talk a lot about it. There's several writers who have written novels about, let's say, from an Indian descendant or coolie perspective. In other novels, the coolies would appear, but usually as minor figures, and then always problematizing also that how they would come from this. I mean, replacing the slaves, even being not well seen by the former slaves, how they would gain some visibility in more recent times. This is one thing. Mauritius, I think, is the majority of the population is of Indian descent, so it's a completely different story. First, second, what Torah Puli is doing, he's really also in his poems. It's really not about he takes this as a starting point to talk about the experience of the indentured laborship, Indian people going to different places in the world. But then it's really just a starting point, and he argues that he wants so his starting point, he would try to merge it with the ideas of negritude and say that as negritude seems to be so much linked to black people, would exclude all the others, even if they have gone through the same or a similar experience, like, for example, the Indians in the Caribbean islands. So his first argument or his starting point would be, we need another concept that allows us to integrate all these people who have gone through similar experiences. And this is why he then suggests coolitude. So coolie, not necessarily really a person who's of Indian descent. This is just the first step, but then using this coolitude as a concept that would allow us to think about people who are obliged to live in similar circumstances. So independently of the ethnic or regional descendants, not descent. But he has been misunderstood so often, so he explains this very often, because coolitude sounds so much like, coolie and Indian, that he had a hard time to explain that he wanted something else.
Which is why I was wondering if he also expanded it to allow for this sort of mixed race intimacy between African descendants and Indian descendants in the French or Francophone framing, the way they did it in the Anglophone Caribbean context in Trinidad, for example.
I would like just to ask about the bilingual cases in the north of Africa. You didn't spoke about it. About Tunisia, Morocco is not mentioned. For example, the pluriculturalism between the Berber culture, the Darija language, also the French culture and language, and the mixed. We're interested especially Tunisia and Morocco. It is not mentioned neither in these lines.
Yeah, because I concentrate. I was coming rather from the sub-Saharan literatures. As for a long time, even the North African or the Maghreb literature, they would not really link to the others. In spite of the fact that you have a very, like a global South movement in the 50s and 60s, where you have a Pan-Africanist, in the real term, Pan-Africanist movements and connections, even between Algeria and other independence movements, or between the African American movements and the African movements for more civil rights and so on and so forth. So besides of all these connections and movements in the global South, at least maybe I'm just not aware of it, but as I thought I could approach Francophone literature from a perspective of concepts, I'm not aware of, they're very important writers, also on colonialism, also on, maybe not on multiculturalism, but on colonialism and the very problematic relationship between those countries and France, but not as a contribution to the larger discussion or discourse going on about these concepts, I think. Otherwise, I'm Yeah. This is why I didn't deal with it. But then at the same time, it's also a completely different story. I mean, then we would have gone also into like Algeria being really part of France and all, a war, which changes a lot, and they would maybe could link better to concepts that have been proposed by Achille Mbembe, because you have the same experience of extreme violence for a certain time, which is not the case in Morocco, and where also the black population or descendants of mixed or black people have a different position than, for example, in Tunisia and in Algeria. But as far as I know, there's not a prominent concept dealing with literature and identity, if I'm not mistaken. But I have to confess that for the last couple of years, I have not been reading that much from Northern Africa. There was no public.
My case is different because me, I'm specialized for this part, for MENA, so Middle East and North Africa. So
maybe we can just have another class next semester, and I can move back there.
yeah, because it's full of author who give also in the literature and especially in the history many contents in both languages, Arabic and French, and try to find a point between both culture, and especially for Algeria also and Morocco is not very easy. I mean, it's quite a different story between the slavery who suffered the black population in French, and the French culture who arrived in the north of Africa. But
then, in the context of Francophone literatures, which is a real problem also in the system or in the discipline, even in the canon at university, and also in most of the discussions, then as part then of those disciplines, we would focus on the text written in French, because most of us don't even speak or read Arabic. Those who would then deal with the Arabic texts might not really deal with the French texts. So there's also quite a cleavage between the two literatures, as far as I can tell. Still. Susan, ich kann dich nicht hören.
Yeah, sorry. I think that is exactly where Blisson comes in with his tout monde comprendre as a kind of, we have to understand each other, but we also have to accept our boundaries of knowledge. So we have different expertises, but this is still a claim. But people are leaving us, so I think yeah, because that was amazing, 2 hours full of mind-blowing new thoughts, and I would have loved. I think we should have had 2 sessions actually.
Next time
we
will also speak about at least the Francophone North African.
Exactly, and I also had questions, but then we can discuss them later, because I like the Césaire Senghor difference. But no, I don't host that anymore. But I want to thank you, dear Ute. That was really amazing. Thank you very much for this.
So nice that in English people always have so overwhelming comments, which is not the case in French. I'll come back.
Yeah, next session we will continue with poetry. Clarissa Tito, who just left, will give a lecture on alternative literary histories, traveling Islamic poetry in Africa, and she asked us to read the text. So those of you who cannot access the e-learning platform, please stay for a second, and I will share it here with you. I didn't do so during this session, but first of all, thank you very much, Ute. I hope we continue along this line.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. And see you next week.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So just a second, I upload the text if I find it. Okay, I've uploaded it. I hope you can see it. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What is it?
That is a text to be read for the in preparation of the next session, or by Orsini.
Ah,
Can you Multilingual India and World Literature by Francesco Orsini.
Susan, I can't see.
I can't see it too.
Where have you?
Orsini.
I just
yeah.
posted it on this. Oh, sorry. I have to sorry. Because sorry. I do it again. Now you should be able to see it, right?
Yes. Thank you. Wonderful. Yeah. That's great.
Perfect. Did you download it?
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof.
Yeah. I'm in the process of doing so, Prof.
Yeah, you go to chat and then you just download.
Yes, dear. I found it. Yes.
Also on e-learning. So, Diko, you could access it externally, right?
Yeah.
So that is also a good session for your work next week, Diko, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Good voice. Yeah. So thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you, Susan. I'll see you very soon. I'll call you in the next couple of days. Yeah? Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Take care, everyone.
Bye, Prof.
When is the next one?
In 1 week.
In 1 week.
Yeah.
Can I send you a mail so you can add me?
Yeah.
Thank you in advance.
Bye-bye.